Welcome back to the A's and B's of Horror. With me, as always, is my buddy
Mark.
and I'm Jim. We're your hosts. First, let's mention we have a Facebook group, the A's and B's of Horror podcast. We have an email now available, the A's and B's of Horror at gmail.com.
We are becoming ubiquitous.
We are. We have now gone live on every major podcast streaming service, including Stitcher, Google, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So search for us wherever you get your podcasts. So, Mark, let's explain to our new listeners what exactly we're doing here today.
You're going to give your opinion on some movies, and I'm going to correct your opinion.
Wow. I'm glad you think so highly of yourself.
So what we do is we pick a modern, well, it doesn't have to be modern, but a mainstream well-known horror movie, and we pair it up with a lesser-known movie that maybe fits the theme or something.
Garbage.
Or something which just, would go well in a double bill.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have two doozies today, let me tell you. So shall we go with...
A little bit of a backstory. Jim picked Poltergeist for today. And,
Indeed.
After last week, I kind of pushed Jim out of his comfort zone a little bit with New York Ripper. I thought I'd throw him a bone here and give him an absolute classic as my B pick. We will get on to whether Jim finds it a classic or not, and whether he's right or wrong.
Indeed, we will. Indeed, we will. We will get to that.
Okay. So first up, Jim, Poltergeist. We probably won't do the deep dive that we normally do, but I have some other topics around it I'd like to talk about. First of all, Jim, do you believe in curses?
No, I don't. I believe in runs of bad luck, but after reading everything that ever happened on this set or to the actors and crew involved, I'm not so sure that this thing wasn't cursed.
So let's run down what happened here. So, unfortunately, the youngest member of the cast, Heather O'Rourke, she died during filming of Poltergeist 3.
Yes.
Jim, do you know the story behind what happened to Heather?
I know the basics. I know that she was in and out of the hospital. They believed that she had the flu. And she was treated as such, and it turned out she had an intestinal blockage, but unfortunately at the point that they caught it, she had gone septic, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's just off the top of my head. I don't remember.
So the other part of that tragic story is that the doctors misdiagnosed her, I believe it was congenital stenosis. They thought she had Crohn's disease. So they were giving her like steroid shots, which if you watch Poltergeist 3, her face is very puffy.
Yes.
That comes from those steroid shots. And she eventually had a heart attack. They rushed her into the hospital. They tried to do surgery on her. She had another heart attack and died. The other more, equally famous, I would say, is the death of Dominic Dunn.
Yes, that was very tragic.
So she was strangled to death, right, by her boyfriend, a guy called John.
It was very close to the time that the movie even came out, correct?
Right. And he actually worked as a sous chef under Wolfgang Puck.
Really? That I did not know.
Yeah, so he strangled her, and he only got like 2.5 years. Blows my mind. So those are the two kind of big ones. I would say, obviously, Julian Beck in Poltergeist 2.
Right.
But, he already had stomach cancer.
Right. He was already diagnosed prior to filming, though.
Right.
He performed that entire role knowing he was sick.
Right. And the other one that sometimes people talk about is Will Sampson, who died 2 years, I think, after Poltergeist 2. I think he had, again, some sort of congenital or chronic ailment. And so he passed away, too. So you have 4 people dying.
Well,
does that constitute a curse, though? over a span of a
Yeah,
number.
I don't. Yeah, I don't think so because you're mentioning things that took place over the course of three films.
Right.
The last of which, if I'm not mistaken, was the early '90s. Um,
No, it was the late
or
80s.
late '80s. Okay,
It was the
so
87, I think,
okay,
Poltergeist.
so I was a little off. But so I don't think that that's enough. But if the urban legend is to be believed, because I remember when this was all the rage and very popular, didn't JoBeth Williams also had a number of miscarriages between the first and second movie?
Perhaps.
So that and all of that. But when you do a movie like this, even like with The Exorcist, people are going to try and draw parallels to everything because that was another one of those cursed movies. There were so many deaths involved with the cast and crew in making that film.
It always seems to be, for the most part, that whenever we talk about cursed films, they tend to be horror films. So I think there's
Well,
something, they want to tie that in, whether the fans or
yeah,
I don't know, the journalists or whatever, because it's sensational.
yeah,
Um,
100%.
I actually was watching I don't know if you've seen the Cursed Movies series on.
I have not watched that yet. I've just gotten back on the Shutter bandwagon, so I will be checking that out.
Yeah, so I went into that thinking, oh my god, it's going to be like the fucking History Channel. It's ghosts and you know curses, and they're all real and stuff. They have some guests on there that kind of buy into that bullshit, but they also have some that don't. But I think it's fairly balanced, and it's not like, oh, it's real and it's the devil does this and all this sort of crap. But
Right.
they had an interview with they showed an interview with Zelda Rubinstein. I guess after Poltergeist 3 and Heather died, there was a lot of the curse thing going around. So she
Right.
eventually she went on to like a news show or whatever and was interviewed. And she said it perfectly. She said, Heather died, Dominic died. It's disrespectful to them to run around talking about a fucking curse. She
Right.
said it was just superstitious crap.
Right. And
And
I can see that point. However, that superstitious crap doesn't sell movies.
right, right. So you don't see many comedy movies. I mean, the only other one that sticks in my mind that people said there was a curse around was Wizard of Oz, which to be fair, could be looked at as a horror movie. So.
Well, yeah, I mean it could be. However, I've never heard anything about it being cursed. I mean, I've heard about weird things happening on set, but mostly it was attributed to bad behavior. And the I mean, you can see weird stuff in every movie. Like I even read a story where they said that there was a ghost caught on camera in Three Men and a Baby.
Right. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Stuff like that. Just that you can find parallels everywhere to support your facts or your sorry, not facts, theories when it comes to haunted productions or ghosts on movie sets and all that crap.
Have you ever heard of a term called pareidolia, Jim?
I have not.
So pareidolia is the way our brains function.
Mhm.
Is that we tend to see patterns in
Yep.
things where there is no actual pattern.
Mhm.
There's a face in that tree when it's
Right.
just a tree, but that's the way our brains look at things. So, I don't believe in curses. I think, certainly the first Poltergeist is an absolute classic.
It
Poltergeist
is.
is fun.
Yep.
Poltergeist 3 is felt cheap.
Yeah,
Even though
it was a blatant cash grab. There was no rhyme, reason, or even cohesive story to that movie.
it's just cheap and not that
Yeah.
interesting and whatever. Did you see the remake?
Yes.
What do you think about the remake?
I did not like it. I don't even believe I finished watching it.
The remake to me was just like one of these unnecessary
Yeah.
remakes where they didn't really add much to it. I mean, the only thing that I remember that I liked was that they used a drone to go to the other side. I thought that was interesting, but overall just bland and forgettable.
Yeah, 100% agree. Okay, so I'm going to point out some of my highlights or lowlights or surprises from this movie. Just that's my goal with our discussion of this movie.
Okay.
So first, I want to say that this movie is, well, let me put it, the chemistry between the quote unquote family members in this film is near perfection. You know, watching this movie, and I don't know if this is nostalgia talking, but watching this movie, you honestly believe that they are a familial unit.
Mm-hmm.
The banter between Diane and Steven is they have such great chemistry on screen. So do Robbie and Dana and Carol Ann. Like, you could really get into believing that this is a family unit. So the first introduction to Carol Ann, I thought, was great because it's a little bit of misdirection, right? They show her at the bottom of her parents' bed watching the staticky TV.
Right. I'm sorry, let me just jump in real quick about the family thing. And, you know, there's probably another discussion about who directed it, really. But, I mean, it's such a cliche of, like, a cliche in a good way, though, that Steven Spielberg really does do a good job writing, you know, these families that feel believable, and having actors that can carry that out. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. So I was talking about the first time we see Carol Ann, right? They set her up, in my opinion, as the creepy kid. She's sitting in front of a staticky TV, yelling, "I can't hear you. What are you saying? I can't hear you. I can't hear you." And she wakes up everybody in the house, and they're like, "What is wrong with this little kid?" Right? So then we flash to the next day. You know, no big deal. Every kid has weird episodes, I guess.
Although there is a quote unquote earthquake after that, right? So she's talking to the TV people at the start, and then like the whole place shakes.
No. That's the second time she's talking to the TV. The quote unquote earthquake is when she says they're here.
They're here.
Right. This is the very beginning of the movie, which where she's just talking and she wakes everybody up by yelling, "I can't hear you, I can't hear you." Mm-hmm. So I appreciated that, but then they turn it on its head a little bit, because then you realize exactly how sweet and innocent this little girl is. When her mother is cleaning her room, she finds out that their pet bird Tweety has died. So my first question is, who in the hell flushes a dead bird?
Well, who's first? If you notice what she does, she actually flushes, and then she's going to drop the bird.
Right. But that's not good TV.
That is going to be a plumbing issue.
Yes, 100%. But lo and behold, she's caught by Carol Ann. So Carol Ann gets all weepy and sad for her bird. They get a cigar box. You know, she does all the sweet stuff. This is for when he's hungry. This is for when it's nighttime. You know, all the sweet little stuff. And then they have a little ceremony on the side, which lets you see exactly how sweet and innocent this little girl is, right?
And how hungry the dog is.
Yeah, because he does want that bird.
Can you explain to me the name of the dog and why they named him that?
I do not know why they named him that, but the dog's name is Ebaz.
Ebaz. Yes, I have no idea either. It's like Stephen King, you know, like I don't know where he pulled that from, but you know.
Yeah, no idea. So the next scene we get, I think you really get a feel for the relationship that Steven and Diana have. They are a bunch of ex-hippies, right? Mm-hmm. And they're sitting in their bedroom just talking and you know, enjoying each other's company and getting stoned.
Right.
So at the end of the scene, in this scene, Robbie comes in and he's having an issue with the storm. He's scared of the storm.
Sorry, Jim. Whenever they're getting stoned, if you remember, Craig T. Nelson does like a duck voice. Do you remember that?
I do, actually, when he's tickling Diane.
So could he be the New York Ripper?
No. I think we are well past that category. Yeah,
just one other thing, which is the most kid thing ever. Whenever they're burying the bird, then right after, Carol Ann's like, "Can I get a goldfish?"
Oh yes, 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 yes. I'm sorry, I did not pick that up. Can I have a goldfish now? So anyway, that pretty much ends that scene where Robbie learns how to count between the thunder and the lightning. That
Mhm.
never worked for me as a kid. Did that ever work for you? Did you ever try it?
No, I never really had to. We didn't really get storms where I came from, like here, so it was never really a big thing.
Where you came from? Venus? Mars? Where are we talking?
A temperate climate that's not Florida with the tropical
That
storms.
that is true. So anyway, the next evening, um, oh, I do have an actual tidbit about this scene, right? So the next morning, it's a busy morning in the Freeling house, right? Everybody's bustling and everybody's getting ready. While after everybody's left the house, it's Carol Ann and Diane left in the house, and uh, Carol Ann is watching Snowy TV again.
Hmm.
And Mom comes over, she changes the channel. Honey, don't watch that; you'll hurt your eyes. So the kid never moves, and now Diane is running around the house cleaning up. She goes into the other room, comes back, and goes to grab Carol Ann and realizes that all of the chairs are now stacked on top of the table. Right? A big gasp. This is the first paranormal event in the house so far. So, fun fact about that scene, Mark. I don't know if you know or not. Did you know that was one continuous take?
Yes, because they had like the hands, the grips or whatever, come in and just put it on the table.
How long did they have to do that?
Well, they were all glued together.
Yes, but how long did they have to do that?
It was like 5 seconds or something crazy.
9 seconds.
Yeah.
So next, we're moving on. It's time for the beginning. It's time for the next storm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh wait, I skipped over the "they're here." Why don't you give us the "they're here" synopsis while I make sure I have my notes. I'm in the proper place for my notes.
So let me just throw a bit of trivia at you. Have you heard about the poster in Robbie's room?
I can't. I don't know. I did notice the obscene amount of Star Wars toys
Right.
in the movie.
If you look, even though that the movie's set, present day in like 82,
Right.
there's a poster there of the Super Bowl in 1988.
Really?
And the date on it is January 31st, 1988, which is the day that Heather O'Rourke fell fatally ill.
Really? Interesting. That's very interesting.
That's my tidbit. Don't believe in curses.
So anyway, so we're on to the next night, and Carol Ann is sleeping with her parents, and so is Robbie. And the TV shuts off, or it goes to static, as it did back in those days.
Right.
After a certain period of time, they would play the national anthem, and then it would go to snow.
Mm-hmm.
The minute it flips to snow, Carol Ann is up and out of the bed. She's sitting at the end of the bed and she's talking to the people in the TV. So the next thing we see is a giant arm shoot into the wall above her parents' bed, and the entire house starts to shake.
Right.
So now everybody's awake. Carol Ann, the shaking subsides, and Carol Ann turns and says,
"They're here."
Mm-hmm. So anyway, now we go through the next morning with the chair scene, and the mom asks, and Diane asks her, who are they? And what does she respond with?
The TV people.
The TV people.
Mm-hmm.
So that night, there's another storm. And Robbie is laying in his bed trying to calm himself with a trick his dad taught him.
So, sorry, Jim. I'm trying to remember here. So
Yes,
before that happens, do we have the scene with the builders making the pool?
Yeah, that is the whole. That all takes place before she cleans up.
Right, and they're sexually harassing the 16-year-old
Dana.
daughter,
Yes.
while the mom just laughs it off.
Yes. So there's another point that I have noted that happens a little bit further into the movie where you can really tell that this is a different time. That um, the, I don't want to jump ahead of myself, but there's another point where I'll bring that up again, that you can tell that this is set in a different time because there is no way in hell that will happen in this day and age.
Yep.
So back onto the second storm. Robbie is a tree attempts to eat Robbie, right? So another piece of trivia I found about this movie is when that's happening, he says, "It's eating me, it's eating me, it's swallowing me down." It turns out he was actually being hurt by the mechanism that was swallowing him. So they had to stop filming in the middle of that scene.
Huh.
Yeah.
If I'd known that, I met him at the convention.
Ah, did you? Okay.
If I'd known that, I would have asked him about that because that's interesting.
Yeah. That is. It's very interesting. But this is also the part where you realize what Dana actually does in the film, which is not a whole lot. She essentially her character's entire premise is to point out the obvious.
Right.
She says during this storm where Robbie is eaten by the tree, the entire family runs out of the house. After Robbie is down from the tree, Dana runs up and says, "Mom, Dad, a tornado." Thank you, Captain Obvious.
Because those tornadoes that come and pick up a tree and then just go.
Right, 100%. So at this point, everybody's freaking out because they've now realized that nobody knows where Carol Ann is.
Mm-hmm.
So they start racing through the house, looking for her, calling out to her. No answer. The little bitch just does not want to be found, right?
And so I think this is a good point to raise as far as the Twilight Zone episode.
Yes, I did watch the clip you posted.
So it's very similar. I believe Stephen King actually based Poltergeist around that episode, which was written by Richard Matheson.
You keep saying Stephen King. What did Stephen King have to do with this production?
Spielberg. It's very confusing. They have the same first name.
Yes, I can imagine that would be really confusing.
But that episode really is the template for the plot of this movie. Right?
It really is. After watching that clip that you posted, because I did not get to watch the whole thing, right. I was really surprised at the similarities. It really is the template for this entire movie.
Right.
I mean, right down to the dog.
Mm-hmm.
So, back to Carol Ann. Carol Ann has disappeared, and they go back up into her room and they're freaking out. They're pulling all the furniture that has been moved and just randomly thrown around. They're pulling it out. Now, this is a part that I didn't understand, right? They finally uncover a pink bundle in the closet.
Mm-hmm.
Why does everybody start to cry?
Because they think they found her.
But they think she's dead. Like, the way that they're crying, it's not relief. It's grief.
No, it's relief to me. That's how
I disagree with the looks on their face and the emotions. To me, it looked like grief. And
no,
it never did make sense to me.
No, to me, it's like relief. It's relief
that
they finally found her. They're emotional about it.
And here's why I disagree with that, right? So when the mom pulls the cover off of that stupid clown, she sighs with relief.
No, I think that's just the reaction that she had when she thought she had found her. But then she was just like, "Oh my God, no!" It's like exacerbated.
Yeah, I think the exact opposite of you on that scene, but it doesn't detract from the movie, so we'll move on, right?
It's okay to be wrong, Jim. It's all right.
It is okay to be wrong, Mark. I hope you learn that lesson one day.
I'll never learn that lesson.
So at this point, Robbie is in a bedroom in front of a TV, and he hears Carol Ann calling out to her mom. And he starts to scream. Everybody runs in, and they realize Carol Ann is calling out from the TV. Dun, dun, dun.
Mm-hmm.
So now, we flash forward. Steve, I don't know how long, but Steven shows up at a university, speaking to a team to try and find help to get his daughter back. And he looks like shit. Dark circles. He's very sweaty in this from here on out in this movie.
Oh yeah, not slept, just probably drinking whiskey,
Yeah.
just going insane in that house, because you
Right.
would, especially when you see what's going on in that room, you would
Correct.
probably start to lose it.
Right. And this is where we get introduced to Dr. Lesh, or Lush, as I like to call her, because she does drink a lot. So this is another interesting fact that I just realized after watching this movie for the umpteenth time. There's a little bit of math coming. Are you ready, Mark?
Oh Jesus, go ahead.
Dr. Lesh asks Stephen, who are the people affected and what are their ages?
Mm-hmm.
He starts with
yeah. So
Diane,
they must have Dominic Dunn when they were like 15 or something.
Yes, right? That I had never noticed that until watching it this time for this podcast.
Yeah.
He says Diane, my wife, is 31, no 32, sorry, and Dana, our oldest, is 16. That makes them. They had to have been either 15 or 16.
Right.
Which was surprising to me. So anyway,
it happens, Jim.
That is the only thing of note that I wrote for that. So now they come to the house to investigate, right? And this, I'm not going to lie, the scene on the stairs that I'm about to describe gets me emotionally every single time. Right? So the mom and dad get Carol Ann to respond and start talking to her. And at some point she says, there's somebody else here, Mom.
Mm-hmm.
And you can hear in the little girl's voice the horror because she's being chased through the house. And Diane goes to run up the stairs to try and find her daughter because she wants to help her. And this giant gush of wind comes through. And she's, oh my God, my baby. She just walked right through me. Look, I can smell her. I can smell her. I get misty every time I watch that scene. Every single fucking time.
You are an emotional being.
I know. As much as I hate to admit it.
But I think Jo Beth Williams really sells that as much as.
Oh my God. It was phenomenal. So after that whole scene where where we have the beast comes, right? You hear the heavy footsteps. The beast comes, and this giant gust of wind just blows everybody right off their feet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the end of the scene. Dana freaks out. I got to go to Lisa's. Okay, honey. So they do. We don't see her again until the end of the movie.
Her or E-Buzz?
No. E-Buzz hasn't left yet. He leaves the next morning.
Oh, I thought. Oh, he leaves with Robbie, right?
He leaves with Robbie, and this is the part. I'm still getting ahead of myself. So everyone's asleep after that happens, and one of the techs, I think his name was Roger, gets hungry.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes and gets some steak and eggs. He's going to make himself some dinner. And as he's pulling the stuff out of the Freeling's fridge, you see all this weird stuff start to happen with the food he's taking out. The steak starts to slide across the counter and then starts to bubble up and out pour the maggots, and the eggs start popping and sizzling on the counter. Mm-hmm. And he goes to vomit from looking at the maggots into a washroom sink. And all of a sudden, he notices all this peeling on his face, and he just starts ripping at his skin and peeling everything, right? The most disgusting scene in the entire movie, which was phenomenal. I loved it. Fun piece of trivia about that, Mark.
It was Steven Spielberg's hands?
Yes, it was. I thought that was pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think you get away with that scene in a PG-rated movie.
Not anymore, no.
I just kind of want to go back. So whenever, just prior to that happening, I love the scene where it's Jo Beth Williams, the lead person. What's her name? Dr. Lush, did you say?
Lesh.
And and they're just having this whisper conversation.
Oh, yes. Yep.
And I just love that scene because I think it's very hard probably to get that sound level right.
Yes.
You can really, it's a whisper, but you can still hear it. And
right, because you can still hear the pops, like the P's and the B's, and you can hear all the pop. They did a very good job.
Yeah, and I think it's very humanizing, again, good writing far as, is it Diane? It's Diane, right?
Diane's the mom, yep.
Yeah, she's talking to the doctor, and the doctor's like, I'm scared too.
Yes.
Yeah. And, this is also, very much the same type of thing that you see in Insidious whenever they bring in, like, the paranormal crew.
Yes.
Anyway.
I have
Yes.
stories about that movie. That'll be interesting. So the next morning, we say goodbye to Robbie and Ebaz. Now, this is the part that would never, ever happen today. Tell me what they do, Mark.
They go in a taxi
By themselves,
Yeah.
the boy and the dog. At the time, would not have been considered out of the ordinary. Nowadays, you'd be fucking nuts.
He's got
Right?
Ebos there to protect him.
Oh, yeah, that's true. So now the Dr. Lesh says, we're leaving, but I'm coming back and I'm bringing help. But whoever the hungry tech was, I don't know if his name was Roger. One of them was named Roger.
Right.
And
he also got a bite out of his side.
he did. He did at the very end when of that scene after he peeled his face off.
Which I think is also important because it shows that, you know, it's not just, you know, from that previous one, it's like a hallucination, you know, that can't really hurt you. But that shows you, okay, well, you could actually really get hurt here. So
Right. That raises the stakes. There's physical damage that can be inflicted here. It's not just ghosts and you know, table knocking and all that shit. So next, who do we meet at this point, Mark?
Zelda Rubinstein.
Yes, but what is her character's name?
She is
Tangina Barons.
I was going to say Tanzia.
Tangina Barons.
Yes.
She is our mighty little conqueror. She is coming into this house to free the freelings, right?
And she is a fucking liar. But we'll get to that.
How do you really feel there, Mark?
Go ahead. So
no, honestly, I'm just going to gloss over this part because this is the entire climax of the film. This is where they go into the, I don't know what you want to call it, inner space or into the heart of the house, and they get Carol Ann back. You know, I'm not going to go through the whole tests that they run and all that crap.
Right. But there is a good line in there when I will go in, I'll get her, and you know, Diana's like, you've never done this. She's like, you're right, you do it.
Right. She's like, you've never done this before, and she says, and Diane says, neither have you, and she goes, you're right. So that was pretty good. I do think that there was a lot of humanity in this film, and I think that's what's missing from a lot of modern day familial horror. You don't have that chemistry or the humanity. You know, you can tell in the newer stories that the only reason these people are on your screen is so we can torture them. So we now think that everything's over. Carol Ann and Diane have been brought into the tub. Everything's great. Everything's fine. They're going to move. We're done.
Why do they think it's over?
Because Tangina says this house is clean.
Fucking liar.
So the next morning, they're packing. No surprise, they want out. They are done with this facility or this house. They're done dealing with this shit.
Right.
So Steven goes to tie up a few loose ends at work, says he'll be back, let the kids conk out if they get tired. Mom goes in to dye her hair because she's got this new fabulous gray that her daughter doesn't like, so she's going to dye her hair and take a bath. I still don't understand why the light over the bathtub is red.
It's the 80s relaxing spa light for your bath. I don't know.
I don't remember I lived through the 80s and I never remember anybody that I knew at that time having a red light over their bath. But anyway, that's beside the point. So now at this point, Mom has blow dried her hair. She's sitting on the bed and she gets attacked. And the fun fact about this scene, Mark, do you know how they accomplished her crawling across the ceiling?
Did they have a room on a gimbal?
I don't know what the hell a gimbal is, sir.
So it's the same sort of effect they use for Tina's death in Nightmare on Elm Street, where they had a room that they could control, they could move around.
Yeah. So the room actually did a 360 while the camera was bolted to the ground. Yeah. So Mom gets dragged across the ceiling and then goes to run after her kids. This was the most gut-wrenching thing when Carol Ann realizes what's happening and she says, no more. That kills you inside when you hear that kid say that. It was gut-wrenching.
Mm-hmm.
So long story short, they get away. They find out that the corporation that is building the housing developments What did they do, Mark? They moved the cemetery.
And yes, and who was Craig T. Nelson's boss?
I don't know the actor's name.
That is the fabulous James Karen,
Uh,
probably best known for Return of the Living Dead, but
yes,
he was in absolutely everything.
he
Yes, so
was.
they built it over a cemetery. They moved the cemetery, but they only moved the headstones. They didn't move the coffins, etc.
This is the only reaction in the entire movie that I think is way too over the top was him screaming at his boss when he just keeps screaming why at the top of his lungs. That was a bit much for me.
Well, I think he showed restraint. I would have popped that guy in the face.
Well, yeah, I don't disagree with that, but I'm just saying that the level of his voice at that moment, I thought was just too much. I thought that it was a bit of an overreaction on the
Um,
actor, from an acting standpoint.
so I just want to go back a little bit and pick out two of the big points that in kind of that last section that people always
Sure.
remember. We have the scary clown scene. The
Oh
scary
yes, yes.
doll,
Robbie getting choked. Yes.
right? And then we have the swimming pool full of real skeletons, right? They use real
Yeah,
skeletons.
I dropped that little nugget on Ray when we were watching the film, and he's like, "Those were all real."
Yeah, because it's cheaper to get real skeletons and have
Yep.
someone build one.
Yeah.
Which again, that goes into the stupid curse thing. But they've used real skeletons in horror movies since the start of making movies. So
Right.
none of those were cursed, apparently.
Well, you don't know about that.
I
Just make,
suppose. I suppose if you look back at the original, Universal Dracula with Bela Lugosi, sit down, Jim, if you're not already. Every single person involved in that movie is dead.
no, you don't say.
There must have been a curse on it.
I'm sure we could find parallels if we needed to.
So yeah, so now we're at the end where
So who shows up at this point, Mark?
that would be the daughter.
Yes, Dana shows up. And what is her? I'm fully convinced that the only reason they showed her on camera again was for the scream she lets out in this scene.
Yeah, and she's got a very good reaction to it.
She does. Because
she's like, "What's going on?
Yeah,
like,
what's happening?" Yeah,
look at our equity disappearing.
Yeah, exactly. And then as they're driving off, Robbie goes, Dad, the house is coming.
Yeah.
It was great. But that whole end scene where they pull into, what is it, the Hilton or the Ramada or whatever the hotel they get is, the door closes, the music's playing, the credits are rolling, and then you see Steven pushing the TV out of the room.
He's had enough of that shit.
Well, I think we all have at that point, haven't we? I mean, I wouldn't want to go back.
So I think that this is an absolute classic. How many scary clown dolls out of 10 would you give Poltergeist?
9.
I would give it a 9 also. So The Elephant in the Room, who directed this?
I'm honestly, this movie has always, I know Toby Hooper has always been credited with it, but this feels like a Spielberg film. In tone, in content, special effects, this does not feel like a Toby Hopper movie.
Hooper.
Whatever.
Just think of Jaws.
Yeah, that's true.
So I believe Spielberg was also shooting another movie, and there was something to do with you can only shoot one movie at a time, and there was a calendar thing and he brought Toby Hooper in.
Right.
Now, how much did Toby Hooper have to do with setting up shots and camera angle and actor direction? I mean, that's all a bit hazy.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I mean, my opinion is that if you've seen other, especially of that era, Spielberg movies, and you saw this one, you didn't know who directed it, you would guess
it's a Spielberg film.
Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
The same can't be said of Toby Hooper other movies, right? So
right. because all of his other films that I've seen have a gritty aspect to them, and they're I don't know, they almost feel dirty. I don't know how else to describe it. Like the opening credits for Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like it's got a gritty, dirty, almost fatalistic feel to it. This does not have that same aesthetic.
Right. And, again, you could say how much of it is Spielberg's writing too, right? Because he's just directing.
Well, no. So for me, it's not even so much about the writing. I'm just talking about visually. Visually, this does not feel like a Tobe Hooper film.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, do I really care one way or the other?
No, doesn't make a difference. It's a fantastic movie.
Good for Toby having that in his resume.
Of course.
R.I.P. Toby.
Yeah.
But do you have anything else you want to say about Poltergeist?
Well, I just have the listener feedback that you committed me to. Other than that, I don't have anything else to say.
Okay.
So, listener feedback that Mark solicited and then committed me to following up on. The only feedback that I saw based on your post was by Sarah Miley Cooper, and her exact words: "Poltergeist is one of my top 5 favorites. Where to begin? The semi-yuppie but hippie parents with a suburban dream lifestyle, tract homes being the real evil all along in corporate greed, sprinkle in death wish, mass suicide, doomsday cults, and paranormal college field trip, and you have a hit." I would have to say, yeah, I agree. I agree.
And we always enjoy feedback. And if you have any questions for either of us too, I mean, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Mark will commit me to making answers.
Yeah. And any more work that you want Jim to do, just let me know.
Right. So, Mark, your turn.
All right. So our next movie is The Changeling. Now, I picked this again thinking, well, I'll give Jim, some gold here. It's not pushing the boundaries of anything. It's very archetypal ghost movie, which other movies have really taken a lot from.
Right.
And your response to me, very short, because obviously we wanted to discuss it here, was that didn't age well. Now, Jim, can you explain your words to myself?
Sure. Absolutely. So I have a feeling that had I seen this movie when it originally came out or sometime thereabouts, I would have a nostalgic connection to this movie because it is your stereotypical 80s ghost haunting mystery type movie. And I do really appreciate those. However, watching this now with that disconnect, it was not good.
I do not have a nostalgia to it because I don't think I saw The Changeling until maybe the mid 90s.
Okay.
So I didn't watch it in the glory decade of the 80s, which
right
where I watched most of the most volume of horror movies at that time, and obviously a lot of 80s movies. But we can go through this, and I can tell you why I think this is an absolute classic.
Right. You give us your wrong opinion, and I'll tell you why I feel the way I do.
Jim, I go grab a glass of wine.
No, I don't think I need any. I'll just tell you why you're wrong.
All right. So The Changeling, we have the wonderful George C. Scott. Are you a fan of George C. Scott? Let me ask you.
Honestly, in every other thing I've seen him in, yes.
He is fantastic.
I disagree.
Fantastic.
I think he overacts in way too many places and has very underwhelming reactions in others.
You're okay to be wrong. We'll start off. So we have his name is John in the movie. So him and his wife and his young daughter are out in the snow. Their car is broken down, and he's pushing it up. He's going to get into the phone box to call for AAA.
Before you get too deep in this, that right there started off on a bad note because many a time was I stuck trying to help push a car out of a snowbank. So already I'm not enjoying this experience. Go on.
Have you had to do that in Florida much, Jim?
Not in Florida, but I did not grow up in Florida.
So that really just set you off. I hate this movie because
pretty much. That's what did it. That is what did it. Yes.
There we go. See, this is almost like a therapy session.
It is, and cheaper.
Well, Well, I have to send you a bill.
Hmm.
um, so we have the scene where he's they pull the car over to the side of the road. He's in the phone box. He's calling for help. Outside, he sees that there's a car kind of going pretty fast and a truck going pretty fast in the other direction.
And they're
Uh,
sliding all over the place,
yeah,
which is apropos for that environment.
right. And he knows what's going to happen. So the truck crashes into the wife and daughter, killing them. So this isn't a very happy movie, by the way.
No,
It's
no,
not like laughs and giggles. It's not like Poltergeist, where
yeah,
there is
no.
a lot of
There is no feel
killing.
good part to this movie.
So a little bit of time has passed. He's
4
packing up.
months.
Yeah,
4 months.
there you go. He's packing up all his stuff because he's going to move to Seattle to take up a job in a university teaching music because he's a composer. While
Oh,
he's while his housekeeper is getting some of his stuff ready to move, a red ball drops from one of the boxes. Uh,
mm,
he has a flashback of his daughter and him playing with that red ball. So obviously, it's there's that emotional connection there. So now he's in Seattle, and obviously he's got friends there.
I,
You know,
I, I have questions. Go ahead.
okay, no, go ahead, throw them at
No,
me.
no, keep going. I'll stop you when you
Okay.
get to this part.
Uh, so he's talking to his friends, a little bit of exposition, talks about the accident, and says, he kind of has to move on because he's kind of been stuck, with the grief. So he's taking up that university position, and
Right.
his friends, that they have a young daughter, and it's a very sad moment because he smiles at the daughter who's around the same age that his daughter was that runs past him. And there's obviously still that grief there, and maybe a little jealousy, that he doesn't have the daughter that they do now.
Right.
So here's so he goes to get a house, right? And this is
Yeah. So here's where I have a question.
yeah.
He goes to get a house. Where does he go to get this house?
Well, his friends know people in the historical society.
When in the history of ever has a historical preservation society rented out a house?
You'll have to suspend your disbelief.
That is not suspending disbelief. That is just garbage, sir. That is a convenient plot device. Anyway, go ahead.
I honestly, Jim, I don't know enough about the historical preservation society to know whether that happens or not. But I am willing to accept that. That's fine because we need him to move into this house, right?
We have to, otherwise we have no movie.
Exactly. So I don't mind, a little bit of okay. Well, it seems a little weird, but whatever. But it all plays into it because you can get access to the historical records and things like that. So they said, well, this, to be honest, they said it hasn't been lived in 12 years. So obviously they had rented it out to other people. He's talking with like the historical society real estate person, I guess, Claire. And one thing that you have to look at this movie is like the atmosphere. A lot of the atmosphere is driven by long tracking shots and static shots. And sometimes it'll be the character's point of view, but mostly it's going to be this disembodied spirit. So you really get a feeling for that because when they're first in the house, they're talking by the front door. And you have this static shot. From the top of the stairs, just looking down on them. And you can really just feel somebody's watching them from up there. Somebody's listening to them. And that's a motif that goes through the entire movie. Whereas we kind of get the point of view of the ghosts and what they're doing. And there's wonderful little, pieces within this movie. So he's, obviously.
Can you name me one?
Yeah, just right now. So he moves into the house, right? And
He
there's
does.
a piano there. They said, it was too expensive to move out. So he's playing the piano and there's a dead note, right?
Yes.
He gets called away from the room, and then we see the piano playing and that note is no longer dead.
Right.
So, just little pieces like that just add to the overall atmosphere. Then we have kind of a fun scene, like it's not a fun movie.
There is no piece of fun in this entire movie, sir.
Here's the one fun scene. So he goes in to teach his class at the university.
Yeah, there's like
Uh,
300 people in there.
he's like, 23 people signed up for this, and it's not snowing outside, and and the room is full. So I thought that was a fun little scene. So next we
You
go
would.
from him on the piano in the class playing a tune, saying you'll probably recognize this, which is obviously something which he would have written, to a concert where they're playing the same
Right.
song.
Right.
Now this concert is for the Historical Society, but there's also a senator there who is
Yes.
going to make a speech, Senator Joseph Carmichael, who is the number one donor for the Historical Society.
Indeed.
I wonder why that is.
Mhm. I think you'll get to that later in your discussion.
So next we get back to John, and he's woken up by banging.
Yes, mysterious knocking.
Loud banging, which is familiar. Have you seen The Haunting, Jim?
I did. I actually watched that this week.
The original?
Yes,
So the banging is also a big part of that movie too.
it is. I actually have a funny story about that, but we'll save that for when we actually do The Haunting.
Ooh, okay.
So I have a question though, because I'm looking.
If you want to hear more.
I'm looking at my notes, right? And did you miss the part where he goes riding with Claire?
No, that's after it, I believe.
Okay, so I mixed it up.
Right,
But
right. So,
I did. I guess that I must have skipped the part where he's crying too.
yeah. So and again, I made kind of
Because
a few notes in between. So
right. So this is where, like, the point where he's crying. My only thought and my only connection to the character is, what a pussy.
you are
He,
heartless.
I am, but the problem with it is George C. Scott does not play a grieving father well.
I
He is
disagree. I disagree 1000%.
he is great if you want a cop. He is great if you want a no nonsense, get down to business and get things done. He does not have the emotional range to play a grieving father.
Jim, sometimes I wonder if there's any hope for you.
I think at this point I'm doing just fine, sir. Thank you very much.
We'll get to that part in a second, but
Okay.
I will say, even in The Exorcist 3, he does some great acting through grief.
Did you just say that there's great acting in The Exorcist 3? I mean, other than Brad Dourif's performance, there's no redeeming qualities in that movie whatsoever.
Jim, I feel you may be dead to me at this point.
Well, that's not entirely untrue, I'm sure.
The Exorcist 3 is another absolute classic.
I do agree with you there. I do agree. I do love The Exorcist 3 for all of its faults.
You're weird. Okay. So where we're okay. So there was banging. He wakes up. He goes to play the piano. A door opens. There's nobody there, obviously. He's playing a song. He's got a tape recorder, which will be important going forward, that he's recording his song on. So that's when Claire comes over and they go horse riding.
Gotcha. I must have just mixed it up in my notes a little bit. Sorry about that.
Point. But there is one point where she's looking at George C. Scott, and he just doesn't look right. She's like, "What's wrong?" He's like, "Kathy, my daughter, she loved horses."
Yep.
And then the next scene, we have him absolutely wailing in his bed through grief that you didn't like.
It was not believable. He doesn't have the emotion. He has the emotional range of a basketball. Anyway, go on.
Jim, I really hope we have a lot of listeners because I really want to hear their feedback. He did win an Oscar, right?
I'm not saying the man is not talented. I'm just saying I don't think he has any emotional depth.
He's an actor that has no emotional depth. That would be a terrible actor.
Why? We have them everywhere.
That's like saying this singer has got no range. Oh, but they're super well known and successful, and
yeah, it's called auto-tune, my friend.
So you think he had an auto-tune for his emotions?
No, I think he tried. I think he put forth his best effort, but for me, his performance fell flat.
You know what the funny thing is, Jim. Whenever I picked this movie, and we kind of talked about it for briefly, I'm like, two classics. This is probably going to be a boring episode because there's no conflict there because we're both going to agree that they're
Yeah.
both awesome. But thankfully, you pulled one out of the bag, uh, and you've made what would have been a very constructive discussion about two classics into just whatever you're talking about. I don't know.
You have to admit, at this point in the movie, right? It just everything starts adding up, or not adding up, but piling up. Like cue the mysterious knocking, cue the water, cue the kid in the bathtub. But it starts coming rapid fire at this point.
Right. So we've had the build up. We've got the atmosphere set. We have
It does have a very good atmosphere. I will give you that. It has a very good atmosphere built up in this movie. It does have that.
And honestly, you could looking at this movie, there's probably only like 5 or 6 main characters, and probably only 4 of those have major parts to play. You could very easily make this into a play.
Yes, you
think.
could.
Anyway, so you're right. So we've got the sound of water, we've got the banging, which happened twice in a row at 6 o'clock in the morning. The sound of the water running, so he's looking around. Right?
Oh, you know what we did gloss over was the ball.
Ball has not come into it yet. I don't.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Go ahead then.
No, so at this point, so he's looking around. He hears the water running, so he eventually finds a bath running, and then we have this haunting image of a boy underwater. So at this point, he's like, okay, what the fuck's going on here?
Right.
So he goes back to the historical society, and he kind of grills Clara, but can you find any more information about this, and can you give me any more details? There is another lady at this historical society, and she's like, she
This
should
would
never.
be Minnie.
She should never have rented that house to you.
Yeah. Cue the spinster warning. We got it.
Yeah, and Minnie's a bit of a bitch.
A little bit.
Yeah. So she said, no one has lived in it. It doesn't want people.
Right.
Which we'll find out is actually not true. She doesn't want it to have people in it more than the house.
Well, and there's a reason for that.
Right. So he's outside of the house, and then there's kind of a little bit of an explosion. And there is glass that comes down, and it's red glass. So he looks up, and there's this window at the very top of the house.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, I don't know if I've been in that room before.
Right.
So he goes, through the house, trying to see if he can figure out where this.
Let's put this in perspective. He doesn't go through the house. He walks directly to that storage closet and finds the door that's been boarded up.
No, I mean, they have a shot of him kind of walking through the corridor, and you can see what he's trying to do. He's trying to visualize it from the outside to say,
right. He does go to one room to look outside.
Right, where would the door to this window or this room be?
Yeah.
So,
but then he zeroes right in on it. He found that storage closet.
There is an economy of writing within this movie where there's not a lot of downtime whenever it comes to really this section of the movie where they just kind of investigate things and they find things.
Yeah, no, it does. You're right. It does. It moves. This movie does move. It's not boring.
But it doesn't feel contrived to me.
That part where he finds the room did to me, but that is the only part that I felt a little off. It felt rushed.
Right. So if there was a 10 seconds before of him just walking around, you would have felt
right.
That scene would have.
Yeah, I would have felt that it was more fleshed out had he spent more time looking to figure out where the room was.
Right. But again, sort of economy in time.
Yeah.
To do it. So.
Right.
So so he finds a boarded up door. He goes into the room where the window had exploded. He sees a small wheelchair.
Which from this point on will become the villain.
Villain?
Yes, the villain. Well, according to Claire, anyway.
I would say angry child.
I was making a joke, but go ahead. You I think they'll understand.
Okay, so where was I? Okay, the wheelchair, yes. So he's in that room, it's very spooky with all the cobwebs and stuff. He finds a journal. It's from January 1909. There's also a music box. Whenever he opens that, the music box plays a tune.
It does.
he recognizes that
Where does he recognize it from?
because that is one of the songs that he's been writing. Claire has come to the house at this point. John tells Claire that the house is actually desperate to communicate with him.
Right.
Takes her to the room. She okay. So we got to that. I think she tells him about a man named Bernard who had owned the house until a tragedy in 1909. Or sorry, that might have been Minnie.
That was when they
That
go
was
to the historical society
Actual
to look up
Historical Society.
previous owners. Minnie tells them about that.
Yeah,
And
Bernard.
that and that's where my favorite part of the movie comes in. That's where they go to the library and they get out the microfiche. I used to love that stupid microfiche machine. I would go to my public library once a week just to play with it. Not even have to look up anything. I just
Jim,
loved being on that machine.
Jim, can you explain to our younger audience what microfiche is?
So back in the old days, they had these films that you would put into a machine so that essentially magnified them. And it made it look like you were reading a paper because they were essentially negatives that would be magnified on the screen in front of you so you could read old newspapers. And you would have buttons that you would have to turn, and it would go, if you weren't careful, it would just start speeding through. It was like you were moving 500 pages at a time. It was the best.
Right. I would ask you to explain negatives to our younger audience.
Oh, God.
I really don't want to go in, down
Yeah,
that.
everything's digital now, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's interesting that Minnie told him about the Bernard, right? So,
Right.
um,
Well, I feel after seeing the movie that it was a bit of intentional misdirection.
it's absolutely
Yeah.
misdirection because she knew what had happened to the daughter of the person that had owned it. She
Right.
died by an accident. I think they said like a horse-driven like coal.
Yes.
Cart.
Yes. She was hit by a horse-drawn cart.
Honestly, they didn't need to put this kind of red herring in there, and they don't make it last too long.
No, it does not.
But I thought, it's interesting that they even put that in there because you get that connection again. John losing his daughter and the house.
Right. So it makes sense. It's a shared grief that binds them, but that's not what actually happens.
Right. So at this point, he goes back to the house. And again, almost to reinforce what he's just read, this is a point where the red ball falls downstairs. He gets the ball. It's almost like he wants to move past his grief a little bit. And he drops the ball. He drives out, drops the ball over the edge of a bridge.
Right, because that's a normal reaction to grief, right? Throwing a ball off a bridge.
Jim, can you tell me what a normal reaction to grief is?
No, I just know it's not that.
It could be. There is no normal reaction to grief. You should know this.
Well, that is true. I do. I make light. I understand everybody grieves differently, but that reaction to me is a bit far-fetched.
I'm just busting your red balls.
I know.
But he drops the ball over the bridge. He drives back home, and once again, and so the way they shoot some of these scenes, I love the cinematography. Again, of the ball just bouncing down. There's the acoustics of the ball too.
I mean, yeah, but that shot where the ball has been teleported back.
Yeah,
it is pretty ubiquitous for that time period for hauntings. Like there's always that gotcha moment where you thought it was gone. That is a pretty common shot to be used of the period, in my opinion.
I mean, you look back at haunted house movies. Again, you got like The Haunting, you got The Innocents, Legend of Hell House. Some of these classics. I think some of them have a common theme through them, which is it's almost like a zombie movie, right? You've got a common theme through all zombie movies or vampire movies. But sometimes it's the way it's done.
Yeah, that does make a big difference. But
right. So our next scene, he goes to the university where he works, and he goes to the psychic research department.
Right. Doesn't every college have one of those?
Oh, God. Maybe probably in the 80s.
No.
Probably in the 80s. There were well, I saw
only in Ghostbusters and this movie.
The Entity. I think it had one.
I don't think it was a paranormal
no,
unit.
I thought they had something within the university that went along with the psychiatrist. He wasn't in the unit, but I
That
think there was a separate one for it because
that is possible. I honestly have not seen that movie in a very long time, and I have an interesting story about that one too. But I
um,
haven't seen that for a very long time.
yeah, it's very good. So now we come to maybe like the almost centerpiece of towards
Yeah.
the last act, where we have the husband and wife who are going to do like a seance.
Yes.
So
And Claire brings her mother. Don't forget Claire's mother. She's very pivotal in this shot.
well, she has to bring her along. That's
Yeah.
something which I think an older person would enjoy anyway.
Well, she does. So through the few shots that she's actually in, there does seem to be a weird dynamic between the two because they're at the fundraiser where the senator speaks and she serves no purpose other than to be on camera with them. And then the same thing, she's just an extra body in this scene.
Right. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know whether maybe she wanted to get some extra pay. I don't know.
Maybe.
So we've got the husband and wife. So the wife is the clairvoyant, right?
Mm.
And she's already as they come into the house, she's already kind of investigating around or being drawn to that room.
Mm-hmm.
But they come down, they sit down, and she starts to write.
Well, so
Scribble.
there's actually a term for mediums that use that. Do you know what they call it?
Automatic writing.
Yes.
Yes, I do know that.
Clearly.
Yes. So, but I think it's a great scene because she's great.
She is. She's fantastic.
And I also love the way the husband enunciates her answers because she's like, "Are you there? Are you there?"
Yeah, she's very monotone, and he just gets
he's like, "Yes, yes."
She's very monotone through the whole thing, and he is just going for it. He
Right.
gives her all the emphasis. It was pretty fantastic.
And this is where we get rid of that red herring, right? Because
Yep.
they ask if it's the daughter, it's Joseph,
Right.
And there's a part where it's just like, help, John, help is what
Right.
he's trying to is what he's putting through. Again, we have some really good point of view tracking shots, around this scene. Next, we get a point where I don't even. Maybe you might know if you're an expert. That kind of metal pole thing or vase they had in the middle of the table.
Yeah. No, honestly, I have no idea what that is. I don't know why it's there other than to fall over and break.
It's almost like a divining rod or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd have to be more well versed in seances.
So they leave, and Joseph has John has been recording this with his previously set up tape player.
Mm-hmm.
So he's listening back to it. Now he hears a voice where he didn't hear it before. So where she was writing down the name Joseph, now he hears Joseph, and in my father's room.
Yes.
So again, we're kind of unraveling the mystery here a little bit.
Is this where he gets the vision though of what actually happened in the room?
Right. So
because I want to talk about that scene. So if I'm in the wrong spot, let me know.
No, go ahead.
So in this scene, is this where he gets a vision of what actually happened in that room and how Joseph died?
Yes.
Okay. So he gets this vision. Joseph is taking a bath. Joseph is an invalid. He can't walk. So his father has put him into the bathtub. And at this point, the father is so sick of the bullshit, he grabs the kid's legs and holds him under the water until he dies.
Hang on. So sick of the bullshit, Jim?
Yeah, pretty much.
What bullshit is that?
I'm assuming it in his eyes, it would be taking care of an invalid child.
Not quite, but you're almost there.
Okay, so explain to me, oh great Swami.
Okay, it's not about having to take care
of
no,
it's about the money. Child. It's about the money.
Right. He thinks that kid is more likely to die before he turns 18. And if he does so, then the will of his wealthy wife, who's also passed away, does not go to him.
It reverts to him.
No, it goes to.
It goes to charity. It goes to charity. Yeah. That's right. So in order to keep it, he killed his son.
Right. I don't know if this is a vision or if this is just more a explanation to the audience. Honestly.
Right. It may be. I think it's a vision because it gets further into the movie. Another character has a vision of what actually happened, also in the penultimate scene. So I do, at least in my opinion, consider it to be a vision. Like I imagine he's seeing everything as it's happening. But
Right.
my question about this scene, that kid is pounding on the sides of that bathtub. Why did he not just pull himself up out of the water?
Because he was a sickly young kid and his much stronger father was holding him by his ankles under there.
Right, by his ankles.
Hmm.
So all he had to do was pull himself up a little bit to get above the water line, and he would have been fine.
So it's the kid's fault.
In this movie, yeah. Or bad writing. I mean, you take your pick.
So I think again you could sit and nitpick like little tiny things. Well, why didn't he do that? Well,
and and I
at the end of the day, it wouldn't really matter because the dad would have just held his head under the water.
well,
But
but I mean that
you want to get that image of just him holding his ankles up, which I think is almost more brutal than him with his hand on his head.
see, and we definitely have different opinions on that because I found it to be almost an amusing scene. I there was no emotion there for me at all because of the ridiculousness of how this kid died.
Jim, do you have a heart?
I don't know. I might need to check.
You are one brutal man. I will tell you
I
that.
am because I mean it's not to sound heartless or anything, but it's a connection to the film, and because I know I had no emotional connection to this film because I could nitpick it. Do you know what I mean? I had never seen it before, and I was picking apart everything unintentionally. Like that's how I know that this was just not a movie for me.
Right. These are so small and inconsequential
Right.
parts that it's weird to me. Okay, so just moving back to the plot here. So John calls Claire, but he's like so overcome with all of this emotion he faints. Um, Claire gets there, and he shows her the recording. He also shows some of the automatic writing.
Right.
On that, there's Sacred Heart, and Claire says that was the name of an orphanage. So again,
Right.
we're getting closer to what's going on here.
Right.
Then we have the shot of the wheelchair at the top of the stairs,
Dun dun dun.
almost like he's like, "Yes, come on, keep on, looking into it, keep on, investigating."
I don't know. Based on Claire's reaction, I mean, she screamed her damn fool head off whenever she saw
Right?
that wheelchair.
Yeah. How else is a ghost going to make an impression?
I wouldn't know.
So then we have the scene where Minnie is calling the senator about John going through.
Why would she do that, Mark?
But why? Because
Yeah, why would she do that?
she obviously is knows about what's going on, and
Oh.
she's trying to let.
So she's a mole.
Yeah. So that's why she was misdirecting them before, and that's why she said, the house doesn't want anybody. She shouldn't have rented it to you. She doesn't
absolute
want
genius.
She doesn't want anybody in that house
Yes.
because she's working for the senator,
Yes.
who again is the number one donor for that society. So she's probably getting a nice little kickback.
Very possibly.
So basically, they find out that the whole 1909 thing didn't make any sense with the girl getting killed in that accident. So they find out that there was a Carmichael, Bernard. I don't remember the first name, but Carmichael, obviously the same as the senator.
Oh, is that where I've heard that name before? Interesting.
Had lived there until 1906.
Right.
And they found out that Joseph had like crippling arthritis. And they said he was going to go abroad to get some treatment. He didn't come back until after World War One. So when did World War One end, Jim? Do you know?
I don't.
1918.
I'm horrible. I'm horrible with history, and I apologize for that.
So 1918. So obviously, he would have come back as a 16 to 18-year-old.
Right.
So this is a point where John really figures out that there was a swap done, or
right.
the Changeling.
I mean, that is a little bit of a misdirection too. The title of this film, it definitely makes you expect something different.
Well,
Because
it
do you know the definition of a changeling?
it's when you swap somebody for somebody else.
Well, more than that though, it's generally done, or it's generally referenced with the Fey folk, or a demon of some sort taking over in place of a
Oh yeah,
human
yeah,
being.
yeah. That
So
is
I
true.
so originally that's what I thought, that's where I thought this movie was going to go, but it turned out it was all just humans being horrible people.
So, does that contribute to your disappointment with this movie?
No, no, not at all. Because I had already seen similar movies and read about this movie. I already knew what the gotcha or twist ending was going to be.
Oh, that's sad. Okay, so now Claire asks, do you think the senator knows about this? And that's kind of like an open question for a little bit, I think, in this
Yep.
movie. And I think he does know, but he doesn't really want to admit it.
Yeah, he doesn't want to admit it because he somehow, even though he's only been Joseph Carmichael since he was 16 or so, he believes he is Joseph Carmichael.
He could have been Joseph Carmichael from he was 12. As soon
Could have
as
been, but even still, at that point, you're old enough to still have memories. You know what I mean?
right, but
He would have remembered his previous life and not denied it as strongly as the senator did.
so, and you don't know how he was brought up, though.
You're absolutely right, because, well, get back into the story. We'll find out a little bit about the suspected swap.
Right. So at this point, they go and they find his will, and they find out really the motive for it, where he wouldn't get the money if he didn't have a healthy son.
Right.
So John also is looking at the blueprints of the properties that they owned, and some was sold and some were sold off. And
Right.
he figures out there's a well somewhere, and he's like, huh, that seems
Not the well.
like somewhere where you could dump a body, right?
Hmm.
But now there's an
Never
actual
been
house
done
there
before.
with somebody living there. So he goes to the house, and
And at
basically,
this point,
yeah,
it is revealed the only reason the mom let him into her house. Why
right,
did the mom agree to hear him out?
because he talked about when the banging, etc., started happening in his house. That's when the
Mhm.
daughter that lives in the house started having visions and
Of
nightmares of a young boy.
trying to come up through the floor.
Right. Um, so yeah, so where are we? Okay, well, okay. So we've done the charity thing as far as the will. The woman at the house has a very really weirdly normal reaction, right? Because
Yeah.
John is like, "Hey," or she's like, "I know what you want. You want to like cut up my house, destroy my floor, and dig up a well." And she's like,
Right.
I have to think about this, right? He,
Yeah.
he doesn't just say, okay, let's just do it. But again, her daughter has another very vivid nightmare or hallucination or vision. So she's like, okay, let's just do it.
Right.
So John and the son of the mother that lives in the house, they start digging up the well.
Right.
And as he's digging down, he finds some bones, very small child's hand.
Almost Hobbit-like, if you will.
Right. And again, they do what a normal person may do at that point. They call the cops.
Right.
Right.
But
Mhm.
they never do justify to the police how they knew that was there.
No, he told the cops that he had like a vision of it or something like that, because the cop brings it up afterwards to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's no good reason, but he couldn't really be a suspect because obviously that kid's been there for
50 years.
a long, long time.
Right.
Um, one other thing that's very important in this movie is that the original son Joseph, he was wearing a medal, And I guess this medal is almost like, a signet ring or something like that, that they must have used to say, hey, I'm actually this person.
Well, there was also an engraving on the back with his name.
Right. But it's particularly important because the senator has a similar one.
Right.
Right. But that'll be more important later.
Yep.
So the police go away, but John still, he still wants to go back to see if there's anything there.
Well, right, because at that point he hadn't found the medal.
Right.
He was looking for that medal.
Right. And the medal just snakes its way up by itself.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. So he shows Claire the medal and decides he's going to go confront the senator. The senator's about to board a plane. And he's like, hey, I know, who you aren't, basically. You're
right.
And he's kind of flashing the medal as the security guards are taking him away. So John goes home and all the doors start slamming.
Yep.
And John is like, what do you want from me? I've done everything that I can.
Right.
Obviously, Okay, so obviously Joseph is pretty upset and he hasn't got what he wants yet. Our next scene, the senator has been pulling strings since the airport incident. And, the local captain of the police force, Captain DeWitt, gets sent to the house. Basically, he goes in there and starts accusing John of trying to blackmail and start issues with the senator, et cetera, and he's really shake him down. At the same time, Claire arrives too. She's very upset.
Right.
And we find out that, again, fucking politicians, he's managed to cancel the lease for John to live in the house, and Claire has lost her job too. Right.
Stupid bitch should never gotten involved.
Right. So
I sound really misogynistic and heartless in this episode, don't I?
Well, maybe you are. I don't know.
Maybe, I guess.
John looks in the mirror at this point and it smashes. And then we cut to DeWitt, who's already left. He's been in a mysterious car accident where no other cars are on the road.
But how does John find out about this car accident?
I believe Claire.
Yes, she calls him. She's in the.
She left too.
She's in the very convenient phone booth that's right next to where the car crashed.
Well, doesn't that bring you back to the opening scene?
Not so much.
A car crash and a phone booth?
Yeah, I mean, whatever. Like I said, I was disconnected from this movie, so
this is one aspect the one aspect that annoys me, and it annoys me in a lot of like supernatural stuff.
Yep.
Where the ghosts can sometimes just automatically kill people. Like, why don't you just kill the fucking senator then?
Oh, that's coming. That's just not.
No, I know,
it hasn't happened yet because it's not in the script yet.
No, I know, but that's similar in like Amityville and like a whole bunch of ones where, they'll keep the main cast alive, but if the ghost wants to show its power, they'll kill off a side character by.
Like Witchboard. Yeah.
That the classic Witchboard, yes.
I do love that movie, even though in all of its ridiculousness, it is amazing. Anyway.
So DeWitt's dead, and Carmichael finds out about this, right? John decides to go to Carmichael's home.
And we are now in the climax of this movie, right. just so the audience is aware of where we are at in this movie.
And we are he's going to confront Carmichael, and like a fucking politician, his immediate reaction is, "Oh, you're trying to blackmail me. I'm guilty. How much money do you want to go away?" John is not interested in money. John just wants to, find some closure for Joseph. So he leaves the medal there. He's like, here are the tapes. Here's the medal. There's no copies. I don't want anything from you. I'm done with this. And at the same time, Claire is actually going to John's house too. So again, we get a lot of the point of
Wait,
view.
no, you missed. Wait, is this
What
the? Did we miss the part where Claire gets attacked?
No, this is a point where she's at the house,
Okay.
and there's lots of the point of view camera movement shots going around the house, and she hears John's voice upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
It's not John, as the audience we know, because he's not there.
We are omniscient in this movie.
Right. Then we get the wheelchair chase. So the
Yeah.
wheelchair is coming
Which
after Claire.
furthers my point. The wheelchair becomes the villain of the movie to Claire.
Yeah, again, it's almost like it's the bottled up rage of this kid, right?
Yeah, but why is it only attacking the woman?
Well, because she's there, and that's its scope.
Because it's in the script.
Because it looks cool.
Does it? Does it though?
Of course it does. So yeah, so at this point there's kind of like shenanigans going on with the ghost in John's house. There's fires being set by it. John gets knocked over. There's a huge chandelier that's swinging, which eventually comes down. It just seems like this entity has, just kind of just like lost it, because these people have helped him, but he's just so mad, so angry still. We then go back to the senator, and he's looking at the two medals, and he throws one away, which is his, and he's going to keep one of Joseph. So what does he do with the medal?
But do you know why? The medal that the senator had was not engraved.
Right. And even if it was, I think he would still want the original, honestly.
Well, I'm sure. But no, I don't remember what he does with the medal.
So what he does is he puts the medal on the picture of the father.
Okay.
And this is the point where you think, well, everything, the picture starts to shake. He's starting to shake too. He's like,
this is where he gets the vision of what actually happened.
Right.
Or what I interpret as a vision.
Right. Well, and this is a point where you think that the senator has somehow come to the house, John's house.
Right.
And, he's walking up the stairs, et cetera, but really what's happening is that he's just being shown that. And really he's having like, Joseph is making him have like a heart attack, or just the stress of it. And at the end, we have, the house burns down. There's a really good shot of the house burning down. I don't know if it was, I don't know if it was a miniature. It didn't look like a miniature, but
I don't know if it was or not, but it did look very good.
Right. And then we have the kind of the end shot of the burnt wheelchair in the rubble, the big box, which pops open with the, obviously the theme that has been playing throughout the movie.
Right. And at this point, John, Claire, and Minnie are the only survivors of this story.
Right. And scene. Absolute classic. So here's the thing. So you've watched Ringu.
I have. Yep.
The original Japanese?
Yes, I've seen both.
Okay. So
it's been many years since I watched the original Japanese, but I have seen it. Yes.
So if you look at the Changeling, this is kind of the playbook for Ringo, minus the curse, but the investigation around it, the kid.
I do agree. This is the first movie that I've noticed all of the elements of the investigation to figure out, what's really going on. Where did this come from? Get to the history and the point.
Right. Plus the child in the well. The person having to go dig up the well.
Right.
Even that is not ending it, and et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So I don't even know if I want to ask you, but here we go.
How many wheelchairs am I giving this?
How many red bouncing balls out of 10?
3.
Fuck off. Did anybody else watch this with you?
No, just Ray watched part of it, but then he went to bed. It was just me.
Okay, this is a 9 out of 10 for me.
So you're entitled to be wrong. It's okay.
I would like a lot of feedback in this from others.
I don't think you're gonna get it. You're not gonna get what you're expecting anyway.
You think so? I
Yeah.
might put up a poll to see, whether people think it's a classic or trash.
Well, and
That's really
don't get me wrong. I never said it was a terrible movie, right? I didn't say it was
what
bad.
was your rating out of 10 too?
3.
3?
Mhm.
That if I rate a movie 3 out of 10, it's garbage.
I don't necessarily. I just don't. I think, like I said earlier, I think if I had seen this in its heyday or when I was a bit younger, so that I had some sort of connection to it, I probably would enjoy it more. But as an adult, this movie lacks so much for me.
Well, I'm glad of the movie that I picked for next week.
You really screwed me on that one, huh?
Well, we'll see because
That's my penance, is it?
This was a nice, easy one to watch, even if you
Yeah.
liked it or not. Nice,
Yeah,
easy.
it was not a bad watch, and it would be okay to have on in the background when I got nothing else to watch on TV. I would not shut it off, but I'm definitely not going to seek it out.
So I think we can move on now
Yeah,
to what we have watched, and I know Jim, you have a specific movie.
I have three. I actually have 3 things. I have 3 things I wanted to talk about in this section. Do you have anything you want to bring up first?
No, I just have a few of what I've watched.
Okay, so Ray and I went to see Nope in theaters.
Okay.
I know that our friend Jeff Alderman is absolutely over the moon with this movie. He thinks it's fantastic. If if I remember correctly, he's been to see it multiple times. And I'm gonna say honestly, this is the first Jordan Peele movie I've enjoyed.
Huh.
I think it was really well done. And it had a few surprises.
Yeah, I still have to catch up with that. I like Get Out. I thought it was.
I thought it was. Yeah.
I thought it was an interesting update of the Stepford Wives.
And I thought it was a cheap knockoff of the Stepford Wives.
I thought there was enough there that was original enough that it wasn't a knockoff to me. I thought it was very similar, but I didn't see it as a knockoff. But that's just me.
Right.
Okay, so Nope, you would. I don't really want to talk too much about it because
I don't want to give out any spoilers. I would definitely recommend seeing that. 100%. I actually there's three movies that I want to talk about, and every single one of them I give high marks.
So how about we do this? You've done one. I'll do one, and we can go back and forward.
Sure.
So I watched a movie called Suicide Forest Village.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not kind of spoiling our picks for next week, but it's actually directed, and I didn't even realize it whenever I first started watching it, by the same director that did Ju-On.
Oh, okay. So that could be interesting.
Takeshi Shimizu. I'm sure
that's easy for you to say.
And I thought this movie was, the first hour was like disjointed. I didn't really know where it was going. It didn't make an awful lot of sense. I'm like, okay, I don't know. The second half of the movie, everything reveals itself.
Right.
It really steps it up, and I thought it was excellent.
But that was even. I felt that same way with Ju-On when I watched it, so I can understand that, and I still appreciated it.
This one is even more so of different scenes pushed together.
Right.
Don't make an awful lot of sense.
Right.
Until there's revelations. And
right.
The start of it, it's like,
I wonder, was that the basis maybe, or the inspiration for The Forest with Natalie Dormer?
Well, the forest itself is its own thing, right? So that's a real thing in Japan where people.
Oh yeah, the suicide forest.
Yeah. So I don't think one was an influence in the other. I think they both just use that,
the same setting.
That, but it is not. It is not. This. It's not about the forest per se. It's about a certain other thing that connects to the forest.
Got it. Without giving away too much.
Yeah, Yeah, and that's not a spoiler or anything because
Yeah.
again, you'll see as you go through. But I was reading up on it, and I guess this is the second in his Village trilogy. I don't think they're related, other than maybe a village
Okay.
thing called Howling Village. So I will be watching that too.
I haven't seen that yet. I have seen the previews for it, but I've not, or the, the placeholders or whatever, but I haven't watched it
Both,
yet.
both are in Prime.
Okay. So my next one is the one that I posted about on Facebook. It was
Oh, yeah.
Amma. It's Amma with Sandra Oh, and I'm going to tell you, I enjoyed this movie so much more than I thought I would. This is a great Korean ghost story with familial ties. It's done well. The acting is superb. The special effects are subtle, but so effective. I cannot say enough good stuff about this movie. I thought it was fantastic.
And that's on Netflix, right?
That is on Netflix, correct?
Yeah, I've heard a little bit of buzz about it, but I haven't looked too much into it.
Yeah, I gotta say, I highly recommend that movie if you like a good ghost story.
Well, clearly I do, but you're a little
Yeah.
about good stories.
No, I'm absolutely jazzed about good ghost stories, sir. Your turn.
Okay, I watched Rambo 3. By the way, I think the first Rambo is our First Blood is very underrated, and
I do agree. I did enjoy that one
it
in
gets lumped into kind of like the over the top 80s. I mean, it is over the top 80s action, but it really has that spine of that end scene with Stallone breaking down,
yeah.
crying eyes out. And you don't really see that in many macho 80s action flicks
No.
where like you don't really see Arnie breaking down at the end of Commando and just
No.
losing his shit.
Yeah,
But
or even Stallone in Cobra. I don't think he broke down at the end of that one, and his daughter was at stake, right?
right. And I think Rambo 3 is just really kind of the more 2 and 3 just got more and more bombastic, very Reaganist. And
Yeah.
again, this is the one where the Americans are helping the Afghanis against the Russians. And it's fine, but I did think there was a great line in there. So he's talking to like one of his Afghan guides or whatever, and the Afghan guide's like, God sure loves crazy people.
Yeah.
Uh, Stallone's like, why? He's like, he keeps making so many of them.
That is
uh,
pretty good.
yeah, so that's just. I mean, I don't really need to review Rambo 3 because it's just big, stupid, dumb, but
Right.
a couple of good little bits in it.
Yeah.
Next.
So my third movie is not horror, but I cannot. I really hit gold in the last few months with like Asian cinema. Because this is a movie, I don't know if you've heard about it. It's called Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yes, and don't
Starring,
tell me anything about it.
I won't, but
It's not. I don't think that's. I wouldn't consider that Asian cinema though.
well, no, her Asian heritage has a strong place in this movie.
Right, and I kind of got into a discussion about people about where I feel movies like what's a Japanese movie and what's an American movie and what's
Oh no, I think thematically it's about the Asian family overall. That's why I say Asian cinema, because the same thing with Amma. It's about the Korean family unit. So I consider it to be Asian, Asian cinema, or
right. I'm
maybe
looking
I
at
just mean Asian centric rather than Asian cinema.
the directors did something else. I'm trying to
So
think.
Everything Everywhere All at Once with Michelle Yeoh.
Yep.
The thing that really attracted me, and this is going to sound so ridiculous, and it's going to peg my age so hard. The actor that plays her husband in this movie has only been in two other films. He was in The Goonies, and
Right.
he was in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Yes, I know who you're talking about.
I
Short round, right?
Short Round and Data are his two other starring roles, and then he's in this movie. The guy's fantastic. I mean, the absurdity in this movie plus the heart, and it's a fantastic film. I can't say enough. and I don't want to spoil it, but it's freaking amazing. And Jamie Lee Curtis is amazing in this film. It's
Yes,
just
I have heard that this is one on the top of my to watch list.
yeah. The only thing I will say is both Amma and Everything Everywhere All at Once, there are some heavy spots where you have to do a lot of reading because of the subtitles when they speak in their native languages. But to me, it did not detract one iota from either movie.
Jim, clearly you don't know me. Do you
No,
think
I'm just saying that in general. I don't mean for
subtitles
you
put me
personally.
off?
Yeah, no, I don't mean that for you personally. I'm just saying in general for anybody that might want to see them, like that might have an issue with subtitles. It does not throw it off at all, in my opinion. To
Yeah,
have
so,
to.
so the directors did another movie which I meant to see but never did, called Swiss Army Man, with Daniel
Oh, with
Radcliffe in it.
that's with Daniel Radcliffe. Yeah, I never saw that.
Yeah, but yeah, that one seems interesting too.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, there are parts of it that are utterly ridiculous. And the actress that plays Michelle Yeoh's daughter, if I'm not mistaken, is also in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Not seen it.
So, well, it's a TV show, so you wouldn't have.
No, I know. It's like the 20s comedy woman or something. I don't know.
50s.
I don't know.
It's a woman trying to be a stand-up comic in the 50s and
I
60s.
just quickly fast forward whenever they forced me to watch it before some other Amazon Prime
It's
thing.
actually it's a quality show, but I know your feelings on TV, so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
get it. But she's fantastic in both roles. I really cannot wait to see what she does. She is really fantastic. But anyway, those are my three for right now.
So the other thing that I watched was the 1979 made-for-TV movie Satan's Triangle
I have not seen that one.
with Doug McClure, the
Oh,
legendary Doug McClure.
Doug McClure, Edie's husband?
No, you don't know who Doug McClure is?
No, I do not. I mean,
Okay,
I might know him. I might know his face, but off the top of my head, I don't know who he is.
do you know The Simpsons? You watch The
Of
Simpsons?
course,
So that's who they based Troy McClure on.
Troy McClure. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I don't recognize that Simpsons character.
You don't, or you do?
No, I don't. I'm
You
gonna
may
have to
know
look
me
this
from
up.
such movies as. That's the Troy McClure character.
Let me look up. Oh yeah, I do know this guy's face. I just don't. I'm not that familiar with him.
Yeah. So that's he was in
Very,
like he was
that
in
was
like
a
the
time.
Land That Time Forgot,
Yeah, the land that time forgot. Humanoids from the deep.
Journey to the
Um,
Center of the Earth, and all those
the
other
house
ones.
where evil dwells, which I haven't seen yet. But there's Satan's Triangle. Okay.
So this is a very interesting one. I didn't really have any expectations about going in, but again, it's about obviously the Bermuda Triangle.
I was just gonna ask that, and I do love some Bermuda Triangle movies.
And
Not gonna lie.
this one was very interesting because it's like he's a helicopter rescue guy, and he's going down because it was a emergency call from a boat out in the very middle of the Satan's Triangle, and he had to go out there and see if there was any survivors or pick them up or whatever. And he kind of gets isolated on the boat. He goes down on the rope and he gets disconnected, so he has to be in the boat. He walks around. There's dead bodies there. It looks like there's a guy floating that's dead. And he finds the one survivor.
Right.
And basically, she's like retelling it, and they show it about what she thinks happened. They picked up this priest guy, and they're talking about it being evil out there. And then certain things happen, and characters start to die, and she's retelling it to him from her point of view.
Right.
She's like, we're never going to get out of this. It's evil. Blah 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 blah. But Doug McClure's character is like, I don't believe any of that. And he kind of explains how all of this stuff could have happened normally.
Methane bubbles, right?
No, well, there's different
explanations,
about different deaths, and he's like, well, this is probably what happened.
Right.
And it's a very good explanation of everything, but they have a stinger ending. So, but I really recommend it. I mean, it's fun.
I'll have to look that up.
Hmm?
I'll have to look that one up because
Yeah,
I do enjoy Bermuda Triangle movies.
it's on Prime, I believe, too.
And I think that's what it said too. I bookmarked it, so I
Yep.
can take a look.
I meant to ask you, do you play video games?
Some, not a whole lot.
Okay, I didn't know if we should do what we've played too.
Well, you feel free. I don't play enough to get invested in that segment, but I will definitely pipe in.
Yeah, I've not been really playing anything much
I was going to say,
recently, other
the,
than
the only
FIFA.
the only new one that I've noticed that has come out. So I do have a few horror themed video games that I haven't played much, but I do own some. But I did see that The Quarry, which is getting really good reviews, just came out.
Right, and that's the
And
guys that made Until Dawn.
okay,
What's I guess I should ask, what sort of system do you have, or console, or
I have a PlayStation 4.
okay? So yeah, so you can play Until Dawn, which
Yep,
actually was written by Larry Fassenbender. I don't know if you know who he is, but
I don't.
he's done a lot of. You'll know him if you look him up. He's done a
Okay,
lot.
probably.
He's done a lot of horror. I think he's very underrated guy. But it's basically a kind of like The Quarry. It's
Right.
more of a make a decision mechanic.
So there is a game that I loved to play in the early 2000s called The Suffering on Xbox. And it's the exact same mechanism. You make a choice, and based on your choice is how the gameplay progresses and how the ending is going to come out.
Right. And this one is very much more. Yeah, there's been a number of games like that, but this one, the Until Dawn, at least, and I think The Quarry is going to do it even more.
Right.
It's very much like an interactive horror movie, right?
Yeah, essentially.
Right. What I will say, have you played The Last of Us?
I own it and I did start playing it, but I did stop, you know, not through any fault of the game, just because, life.
Yeah, I will tell you this. And I finished it probably over a year ago, but The Last of Us 2
Mhm.
is probably the best video game I've ever played.
So my favorite horror themed video game is the Fatal Frame series. I think they have the best atmosphere and the best villains, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I played some of those before. With Last of Us 2, I think it's just the best game I've ever played. Horror.
Right. Well,
Um,
no, I agree with at least with the first game from what I've played so far.
the, the
I think it's really well done.
second one, narratively, on what it does to you emotionally,
Right.
blows it out of the water. I
Oh,
have
that
I have never felt certain emotions playing a video game that
right.
I have with Last of Us Part 2.
Right. And that's why I think I got so invested in the Fatal Frame series is because when I was playing the first one, um, the atmosphere of that game was so well done that the person I was with at the time could not play unless I was home or every light in the house was on.
This one is not, it's not so much scary. It's just like
Yeah.
you're controlling a character and you have to do certain things and you just don't want to because you've been put through a journey with certain
Right.
characters. But
Yep.
at the very start of the game, you would not have thought of that at all.
Right. And that's the Blair Witch video game, which I thought was really well done, has a similar story arc where the dog that is your companion through the entire game, you either have to save him or
Mhm.
leave him to die.
Save him.
And the choice you make in that affects how the game will end for you.
I'd save him.
Well, of course you would. I know you would.
It's not even choice. Save him.
Yeah, I did not choose to leave the dog to die, but I
No.
did read online what happens if you do.
Yeah, fuck those people that did that.
Yeah, I agree.
Those people are inhuman. With cold
They
black
are.
hearts, Jim. Cold
Yeah.
black hearts.
Well,
You
that's what
might
you've been
identify
accusing
with them.
me of all night, right?
Yeah, you might identify with them.
I do. I do. I identify as a heartless son bitch.
um, do you have anything else you want to talk about?
I do not at the moment. I think that's good. I think we should just give them a hint as to what we're going to watch for the next episode.
Okay. What is your A movie pick, Jim?
My A movie pick is the ever fabulous Sarah Michelle Gellar in The Grudge.
And my B movie pick is the 70s classic Japanese Hausu, also known as House, which I am looking forward to hearing Jim's reaction to.
As long as Donald Duck doesn't make an appearance, I think we'll be okay.
This one may blow your mind, though. This one may blow your mind.
I don't know. I seem to recall you having a favorable reaction. Was it you? I saw a few favorable reactions to a movie called The Deep House, which I
I,
thought was absolutely ludicrous.
I thought it was decent.
I don't understand how.
Well, I think you have to buy into the concept, right?
No, and that's the part I have the problem with.
And,
I was not on board from the beginning.
and that's fine. It's like a movie which seems to be universally loved, which I just can't get. I can't get behind the concept. It's A Quiet Place.
Yeah, I can see that. I can understand that point.
I just like that's stupid. That's
Well,
stupid.
it's no worse than. Let's be honest. It's no worse than Bird Box.
I have not seen Bird Box, and I don't really want to.
Yeah, count yourself lucky.
Well, that and Quiet Place came out around the same time, right? And I think they were both seen as somewhat similar.
They
Like
were
you can't look at one and you can't make a noise in the other.
right. It is sensory deprivation, but I think Bird Box definitely took it to the extreme.
Yeah, no interest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, is that it? Do you have anything else?
I don't think so. Jim, tell us some anecdotes.
I have no anecdotes. Not today.
If anybody's listening to the end, again, we are. If you want to be a guest host, we have a guest host lined up for not next week, but the week after.
Correct.
Just let us know, and we'd be happy to have you on. You can tell Jim that he's wrong, also. Okay. I think that's everything for today's episode. And Jim,
That is the end for me, sir. So I just want to thank everybody for listening. I really appreciate everybody taking the time to join us and listen to our ridiculousness.
and the Changeling is 9 out of 10. Jim's wrong. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Bye.